Okay, so it's 5 after, so I'll get started with the presentation. My name is Emily Mercy. I'm one of the co-founders here at Go Parity Canada. Um, I'm super excited to bring you this informative session on our Sober Island Oyster Project. I'm experiencing a little bit of a delay, so I do apologize if I'm slow for any reason. Aditi, if this happens, just feel free to unmute yourself and let me know. But I'll start by acknowledging the land that I'm on. I'm grateful to live, work, and be in relation with people across many traditional and unceded territories. Today, I'm speaking to you from Whistler, British Columbia, the unceded territory of the Squamish and Lil'wat Nations, and together we honor their language, culture, and history. And I invite you to acknowledge the land in which you are joining from as well. And if you're new here, please feel welcome to write in the chat your name and where you are today. So we do have a Q&A portion at the end of the presentation, so you might have noticed we are recording this presentation, but we'll pause the recording for the end so that you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions live, or you can also ask questions by just popping them into the chat even throughout the presentation, and we'll try and get to all of those at the end. The purpose of this presentation is to bring light to the Sober Island impact investment opportunity on the Go Parity platform. So Sober Island is a family-run oyster farm in Nova Scotia who is raising money to purchase oyster seeds, very small oysters, so that they can grow them into market-ready oysters. And on the agenda for today, we're going to be providing you an overview on impact investing and how we do things here at Go Parity Canada. We'll be expanding your knowledge on Canada's oyster industry and the benefits of this type of farming. You'll get to hear from Trevor Munroe from Sober Island, and I think Michelle as well, who can give you an inside look into their family farm and all the good that it's doing. And then we'll talk about the project impact as well as how you can invest in this project. So let's begin by talking about why impact investing is important. So I was at a conference yesterday, the Innovate West conference in Vancouver, and one of the speakers, Matthew Bertulli, said something that really stuck with me, and it is that business is the best vehicle for impact. And I think that is so true. Unfortunately, it's not often the good kind of impact. Sometimes it is. But all around us, we see businesses who are making real change to their communities and to the environment. But the question remains of when we evaluate businesses, when we look to where we should put our purchasing power and our investment dollars, what kind of impact should we be looking for? So the Sustainable Development Goals are a set of global goals that cover a broad range of social and environmental categories that we should not only be working towards, but we can use to categorize and measure impact. And at the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, the United Nations outlined these 17 interlinked goals for sustainable development that promoted positive impact on our people, planet, communities, and our economies. And these goals have been widely adopted by governments, organizations, and individuals around the world. So to achieve the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, it would require $5 trillion of investment into initiatives that support these types of goals. And unfortunately, we are not close to achieving that level of investment. We have not been hitting our targets. Although it sounds simple enough to invest the much needed capital into these global goals, it's actually really difficult for non-professional investors or everyday citizens to invest in these goals because the system, the investment opportunities are not really built for investors to be able to make these types of investments where they can actually see their impact. And that's kind of where we come in at Go Parity Canada. We help people invest in real Canadian businesses working on projects that create real, tangible impact. So with other green or ESG investments, you generally don't see the impact that your investment dollars are having. Here at Go Parity, we take a really different approach. We put transparency first so that you can fully understand the impact that the organization is having and how that organization is using your money. So I'm super excited because today we're taking it one step further, actually having you connect with the people behind the organization at Sober Island Oysters. But just backing up a little bit, because many of you might be thinking, well, this is unlike any investment I've ever heard of or made. So how does it compare to other more traditional investments? This scale shows you how investments transition from a solely financial focus to a solely impact focus. So socially conscious investors will want to have a portfolio that mixes a return first approach and impact approaches. So return approaches are like ESG, environmental, social governance investments, green investments, the types of things that you see provided from your bank or an investment app like Wealthsimple, Robinhood. These are a good indication that investors are looking for investments that consider factors outside of just solely profit, but they usually don't go to far extents to show the positive impact that they're having. And because of that, this space has been heavily criticized for its lack of transparency and sometimes deception. But this is still where socially conscious investors will probably have most of their portfolio because there's a lot of options and therefore a lot of opportunities to diversify. So impact first, this is where Go Parity Canada would fall. We go to great lengths to show the impact of our investment opportunities and help investors really understand their investments, but also this whole space of impact investing. Two key factors of this impact first approach is that they're purpose driven and they include measurable impact. So that's really what we aim to achieve with the work that we do. But the problem with impact first investments is that there are very few options for everyday investors. So of course, we are trying to change that. And when it comes to diversifying your portfolio, understanding how much you want to invest in impact, you should only really put a small percentage towards impact investing. I would recommend starting with as low as 1 to 2% and then increasing it from there up to a maximum of 10% of your investment portfolio. And what I love about the Go Parity model is we make it really easy to do that, just to dip your toe in. Our minimum investment amount is $10 and there's no fees to invest that money. So it's very, very easy to get started and try it out. And we also cap people at investing 10% of their financial assets. So you actually cannot invest more than 10% of your portfolio on our platform. And I think that's a really important safety feature, but also a learning opportunity for investment diversification more generally. Now you have a little bit of impact on or background on impact investing. I want to talk about it in the context of the Sober Island project. So I am going to leave it up to my colleague Aditi and Trevor from Sober Island to give you the inside scoop on what this project really means from an impact perspective. But broadly, from the financial perspective, this is a debt investment. So we are raising $100,000 for Sober Island, which will be provided as a loan. And on our website, you can see all the terms of this loan. So here on the slide, there's an example of what the project looks like, and the terms are right there. So it'll have a lifetime of 3 years, meaning in 3 years' time, all investor funds plus interest should be paid back. And investors will receive monthly payment installments, which include a part of their principal repayment plus their interest rate. And we actually have an investment simulation feature on our website as well, which you can check out using the QR code on the screen. And you can input how much you want to invest in the project that you want to invest in. And it'll tell you how much interest you're expected to earn from the project, what your monthly repayments will be, and lay out your repayment plan. So this project pays a 7.5% interest rate, which is actually our highest interest rate on our Canadian platform so far, which is very exciting. And it basically means you'll be earning 7.5% on your annually on your invested capital. So again, if you want to see exactly what that means for the specific amount you'd like to commit, you could try out our investment simulation feature. And it wouldn't be a full transparency presentation if we didn't talk about the risks of the investment. So there are three main risks that I think GoParity investors should generally be aware of. And the first being liquidity risk. So when we loan money for a set period of time, so in the case of Sober Island, it's for 3 years, that means that you will not be able to get back all of the money you invested until that time is up. So if you invest $1,000, you won't be able to get that entire $1,000 back until 3 years into the future. But what we do to combat this is set up monthly principal repayments. So part of your invested capital, let's say it is $1,000, part of that $1,000 is coming back to you each month spread across the 3 years. So you'll have some of your invested capital back after as soon as a month. And then after a year and a half, you should have already half of your invested capital back. But again, not all of it until the full 3 years is complete. So the next risk is interest rate risk or duration risk. And this project pays an interest rate of 7.5% a year, and that is a fixed rate. So over the course of 3 years, this interest rate is locked in. But external to this project, interest rates could increase or decrease, making this 7.5% less favorable compared to borrowing rates in the future, or it could make it more favorable. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable earning that interest rate no matter what might or might not happen in the future. So default risk is the big one, and this is what if the organization is unable to pay back the loan? What if something happens, they go bankrupt? And with business loans, this is always a consideration because it's a possibility. You have to ensure that even in the worst case scenario, if it does happen, you're going to be financially okay and comfortable with losing that money. And on our end, there's many precautions we take to assess that risk, which you can read about in the financial viability section of the project, which is on our platform. And we do what we can to mitigate that risk. So this loan does have a personal guarantee from the shareholders. We've done extensive risk assessment on the project, on the company. We do have strategies in place to deal with this worst case scenario. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's a possibility and it always will be with this type of investment. So never invest more than what you could afford to lose. So that's the main risks I would say to be aware of and ensure that you're comfortable with before moving forward. And now that we've talked about both the risks, but also the financial benefits, I'm going to pass it off to Aditi, who is our Sustainability and Community Engagement Coordinator, to talk a bit more about the fun stuff and teach you about oysters.
Perfect. Thanks, Emily, for that intro and setting the tone around impact investments. So, what exactly is this project financing? Sober Island is currently looking at taking out this loan to purchase 500,000 small oysters and then grow them over the course of 12 to 24 months. And we'll hear a little bit more from Trevor as we go along about what this will look like. But the idea is that you purchase these small oysters for around 20 cents per seed, and then you're able to sell them in 12 to 24 months at an average of $1 per oyster. So it's a pretty exciting opportunity. But what do oysters actually have to do with impact? So if we zoom out a little bit, the global protein demand is soaring as our population approaches nearly 8.5 billion people. And livestock farming, which gives you your traditional forms of meat, significantly strains our planet's resources and really can't meet this demand sustainably. And so this is really where we picture oysters coming in. They not only offer a high nutrition solution with minimal environmental impact, but they also provide nutrients like zinc, iron, omega-3 fatty acids, and are fantastic for heart health. So if that's something that you're concerned about, we suggest oysters. Um, and then on the environmental side, oysters are also really great at purifying water. As you can see here, I have this big 50 gallons on the screen, but what essentially that means is each oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water per day. And you can kind of see the comparison in this picture where there's one tank and it's water from the same sample. And that tank has no oysters versus the clear tank, which has oysters. And so you can visibly see a difference in water quality. And so this not only helps keep our waters clean, but it also helps support the biodiversity that exists within these waters. And so as they naturally filter and feed from surrounding waters, they eliminate the external need for feeding them. So if you think about a cow needs resources to be able to produce meat from it. However, oysters are able to take those resources from the water and in that process filter the water. So it's a really cool process that happens within the water and happens in order to grow oysters. And they're also farmed underwater, which helps preserve the natural land habitats and prevents deforestation, which often is the case for land-based agriculture. So in Nova Scotia, economically, aquaculture is really more than just farming. It's a huge economic driver, and it contributes to nearly $120 million in exports. And this is a statistic from 2018, so it's only grown since then. And they support over 250,000 jobs across Canada, many of which are in rural and coastal communities like Sober Island. And this industry is not only boosting these local economies and these rural economies, but providing stable employment and offering a network of related businesses and enhancing economic opportunity in these areas. So as you can see, oysters, although they have a small shell, there's a huge impact associated with them. And I would love to invite Trevor up to chat a little bit more about Sober Island and their journey with oysters. And so Trevor's journey started in 2005 when he and his wife Michelle decided to leave their corporate jobs and dive into the sustainable aquaculture industry. So let's give a warm welcome to Trevor. And at this point, I'll hand it over to you. And you're muted there. I can't quite hear you.
There we go. You can hear me now.
Perfect.
Okay. No, thanks. Thanks for that. No, I'm Trevor Munroe. My wife, Michelle, is sitting back here as well. She's listening and taking it all in as well. And me and my wife, we started the oyster farm idea back in 2005, as you said there. And it took us about 3.5 years to get the leases on the water. We had to go through an application process with the province and the federal government, and we are approved our first lease in 2008. So we started seeding oysters in 2008 and 9, and then in 2010, the idea was becoming more of a business instead of a hobby kind of farm. We kind of started at first because we still had our career jobs in Halifax. And then in 2010, we were asked if we wanted to get another lease. So we went through another process and we got another lease granted to us. And basically in 2010, moved our 2 young children down and quit our jobs and basically went all in on the oysters. And since then, 2010 to 2015 was our biggest growth. We were putting a million tiny oysters, I guess you could say, just oysters that were 6 months old, that were coming from a hatchery or a wild oyster collection area, and which is mainly from New Brunswick and PEI. And so we filled both our leases, and in 2016 started getting our oysters across Canada and into the open market. And then coming into 17 and 18, we kind of started realizing we are a first generation oyster farm, so we had to learn as we went. All the other oyster farmers around were all very open with all the information and how we grow oysters on each different site, but it's very site specific. So we had to basically learn how the storms were going to come and the winds were going to come and the tides and what Mother Nature was going to do to us or help us or not. And we were set to start bringing big volume of oysters to market in 2018 in the fall. In the fall is our biggest harvest. That's when we harvest all the oysters, bring them all ashore and basically sell off what we can and put the rest back in the water. Every oyster comes ashore every year just to get graded, put back out. They all grow differently. And then we got hit with a hurricane in late summer 2019. And that devastated about 80% of the farm. It damaged all our lines. We lost quite a few oysters with the storm, but it was after the storm and into the next year where we started losing more because we couldn't do any really work. We just had to kind of get all the lines fixed back up so we can sink for winter. And which we managed to get done by the end of 2019, got it kind of back to safety and under the surface for the ice to come, and thinking that we'd be okay coming into 2020. And then COVID came. So COVID kind of stretched out almost 3 years of very little sales because there was no market, because we were at that time selling a lot of direct to restaurant, and our distributor was going to basically direct restaurant. So during the COVID, there are a couple things came from COVID. We started utilizing the local high school and the students. They have some co-op programs up there, and they were looking for things to do. So we started bringing grade 11 and 12 students down throughout the year. They'd come down once a week. So we got to interact with them and got them interested in the water and working outside. And then that led into Canada's student summer grants. So we get 2 students a year through that in the summer. So one does hospitality on our farm tours, and one will do basically farm maintenance and doing the farming side of things. And but over the COVID years and getting a true count and getting everything back to normal, we realized that we did lose over half the oysters we had in the water during that whole process from 2019 to 2022. And then coming into 2021, 22, we got back on the market with a half decent volume, but we did dedicate ourselves to local. So we, instead of across Canada and cutting that expense from dealing with that, we just focus on Nova Scotia. So at this point right now, all our oysters are eaten in Nova Scotia. There's very few that are sent across Canada at the moment. And but with all the hardships we had through the storms and the amount of oysters, because these oysters, we were putting them by the million. They're less than an inch. They're less than a year old, and they're less than an inch in size. And they were taking us 6 years to bring to the market size. So last year was the first year we started putting seed back in, and we know the seed farmers there, one in PEI that has farms here in Nova Scotia. And I told him our situation, that we'd like to get some seed at different years. And he put me onto this program that he does with a couple other farmers he sells seed to. And instead of us paying 2 to 3 cents an oyster, we were paying 20 cents an oyster or seed. So, which is a big jump. And to get big volume into the water, it takes a bigger initial investment to put them in. So we did that with, we put about 250,000 in last year, and we realized that we started selling some of them already. So within a year, we can start to sell them oysters, and then after 24 months to 30 months, that whole batch will go. So we came up with the plan to basically put 500,000 of these oysters in each year for the next 3 years, which will basically cost us $100,000 each year. And at the same time, we are going to buy some of the smaller ones too, just to kind of build up some stock and still watch them and grow them. But our focus is going to be on these 20-cent ones. And after 3 years, instead of just moving forward as is right now, instead of not going through Grow Parity and doing this project, it would be a lot slower growth to get back to where we were and where we were going to be before the major hurricane that came through. So this way gets us back faster, and it will most likely we'll just continue buying 20-cent seed, and then we'll just bring up the volume to 750,000 in year 4 and 5, and then $1 million in the other years to come, and then just continue on. But the risk, it cuts our growth down for the oysters to be on site from 1 to 3 years max. Instead of that 6 years, cuts 50% of the risk of open water farming, which make no mistake, there is a risk. Mother Nature can deliver some pretty nasty storms, but we experienced the Hurricane Dorian we got hit the worst in Nova Scotia, right where we were at. The eye come right through us, and it came on a bad side of the wind. So that, but since then we did restructure our farm with a lot of stronger, more strength, and position it differently so that them types of storms won't hurt us anymore. Category 2 now, that's hopefully we don't see that in Nova Scotia, because it's gonna be more than just our farm get wrecked, I'm sure. But no, that's we're very excited to move forward with these larger seed and bring oysters to market faster. The demand on oysters is through the roof. It's no specific farm. Our farm is a little more out there because we do a lot of on-site events and off-site events. So we're very out there in the oyster world here in Nova Scotia, and doing a little bit of traveling into Toronto and Montreal for some oyster festivals and stuff like that. But the demand, it's not hard to sell the oysters. We could be selling. We turn down more sales than we sell at this moment. So we want to get back up to that volume, and we see that this project and the impact it'll do, that it'll get us there. So we're very excited to work with these guys and see these projects through. But
Perfect. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a family business, but two of my good friends came and moved their families down from Halifax. They work here full time, and then we hire two summer students, and then we collaborate with the Dalhousie University. They study our body of water on a yearly basis. They're always studying oysters and mussels that come out of the water. So they're always down. They're down a few times a year doing little experiments and setting up little labs and just studying the oyster and the water and everything else that comes along with it. But it's a very sustainable protein that we can easily grow if we have the oysters out there. So
Perfect. Yeah, that gives us a really great snapshot of your whole journey, Trevor, along with your family, and a picture of kind of where the oyster is at in terms of how they're showing up at your farm. So with all of this great story in mind, for those of you looking at Sober Island Oyster Farm as an investment, how do we actually understand and capture the impact that we've talked about from oysters and from Sober Island Farm as a business? So at Go Parity, we really rely on one main framework, which is the GIN, Global Impact Investing Network, and they base their framework on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And this really helps us target critical global issues like responsible consumption and production, climate action, and life below water. And so those are really in line with what Sober Island Oyster Farm is doing right now. And at Go Parity, we use these SDGs as a roadmap to make sure that our actions that we're taking in local communities, in Canada, and our provinces are in line with global action as well. So looking a little more deeply into each SDG, SDG number 12, responsible consumption and production. Why is this so important? Well, it's really all about using resources wisely and minimizing waste, which is something that really hits close to home on the East Coast, where the ocean is such a major part of the economy. And a key example of this is Sober Island and their farming process, in which they're able to take waste from the oyster grading process that would otherwise be trash, like dead shells and seaweed, and turn it into resources for other members in their community, like gardeners and chicken farmers. This is a really perfect example of how a local practice, something as small as collecting waste and repurposing it on a farm, can lead to broader environmental benefits. The next one we want to highlight here is climate action. So on the note of on this topic of environmental action, one really fascinating thing that I learned through putting this campaign together was the role of oysters in coastal defense. I talked on end a couple minutes ago about oysters and how they're so impactful, but a huge factor is that they're able to protect and strengthen our coastlines, especially with climate change being so relevant and impacting more extreme climate events. Oysters can really help buffer the coast against storm surges and protect the shoreline from those surges. So that kind of covers those first two. And then life below water. As we mentioned before, oysters grow in the water, and so there's a lot of action that has to happen there. And when it comes to life below water, one of the key SDGs for this project, the goals are really clear. It's to sustain, protect, and improve water quality. And the project at Sober Island is really able to do this. We mentioned before, they're bringing in almost 500,000 oysters into the water just in a year. And if you think about the amount of hundreds of thousands of gallons of water that's going to be able to filter, it's really a profound impact that it's going to have. And something that I really want to highlight in this section is the ability to fight against ocean acidification. And so essentially what happens is an oyster shell is able to sequester carbon, which is a pollutant in the water, and that's really where the filtration happens. So it's a natural solution. It's something that happens in nature already to a man-made and human-made problem with acidification. So it's really, there's a huge scope of impact that these tiny little creatures are able to have. And beyond the environment, the farm is really, as you can see, like through these amazing pictures, they have a huge sense of community and a huge sense of impact for their broader audience. And it's really profound what they're able to do when they're teaching new generations, university students. They're having people come and visit their farm and work with nature. And so there's this like family and hands-on aspect that creates a deeper impact for their community. So lots of great impact happening on this farm and with these oysters. But Emily, I'm really, really curious, what can I do if I'm interested in being a part of this impact?
Sorry, I was muted. That is a great question, Aditi. I'm going to show you exactly how you can sign up and invest in this project. If you are interested in doing so, I think you both have done a really amazing job about bringing people into this story and showing them exactly the impact that this project will have. And it was really great to hear from you, Trevor, just more about the history and kind of the challenges that you've faced, especially the more recent challenges as we deal with the changing climate and more natural disasters and what you're doing to combat those things. Yeah, it just shows how important this financing is and how much good it really can do. So that being said, the first thing you need to do to get involved in this project is sign up for a GoParity account. So just head to our website, goparity.ca, click the big yellow button that says open an account, and provide us with some personal and financial details. Once you've done that, you will once you've done that, you'll sign a little lender agreement. Then you'll have access to your GoParity dashboard. So you'll see your e-wallet. You won't have any money in your e-wallet yet, but maybe you'll want to secure your investment spot before you top up your wallet. So we do have a reservation feature where you can save a spot in the investment before committing any money. So when you have an account, the next thing you'll do is head to the project page and give the project a final review, the investment conditions, the project description, impact description, financial viability, all of that is out for you to see. And when you're ready, you click invest. And from there, you can input the amount you'd like to invest and see your investment limits. If you don't have any money in your wallet, the button will say reserve. And after signing your no purchase agreement, your reservation will be held and you will be prompted to top up your wallet. So you can top up via bank transfer, which does take a few days to process. That requires knowing your online banking information, so your bank login, or having all of your direct deposit information. But you could also top up with e-transfer, so you'll get an email from your bank with a money request, and you just need to accept that request. And that's it. Now you're done. And as you invest more and more, you can see the impact that your investment dollars make. And to stay up to date, make sure you follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'll pop that into the chat. And keep an eye out for upcoming projects as well as all of the updates on this Sober Island project. And if you have any questions, we will open the floor to questions now.